Hello everyone, and welcome back to Let's Play Kyuuyaku Megami Tensei. Last time, we continued making progress through the rotting sea of flames here, and we picked up a demon in a bottle named Ruth, who is going to prove vital in our upcoming adventures. I say that like there's a bunch of this game left for us to explore, but in reality, after this episode, we are going to be in the end game, so... for whatever reason, like, every dungeon in this game has taken me 3 episodes to cover completely. And we're going to continue that tradition here, where we are going to wrap up this dungeon and fight a boss at the end of this episode. I don't know, I didn't really plan for that, it just kind of happened naturally as I recorded and edited this Let's Play, where it's like, oh hey, every 3 episodes we're finishing a dungeon and moving on to the next, so... Kind of happy that that fell into my lap, and I feel like it kind of naturally broke up this Let's Play into 3 episode arcs that kept things fresh, and I'm really happy with the pacing of it, and how that kind of all came together without me really trying for it. Excuse me, I'm a little coffee today for whatever reason. But yeah, before we make further progress through the rotting sea of flames, and to be honest, we don't have much more progress to make, we need to double back around to the Sky City of Bien. And we are doing so just by going back through that elevator that we took from the Mazurka corridor down to the rotting sea of flames, so we're returning from the way we came. And then we're going to go back into the second town area in Mazurka, and then access this goddess statue, which is going to give us this helpful hint. Just keep this in mind for the upcoming boss fight. And then we're going to use it to warp all the way back to the Sky City of Bien. I don't know if I've covered goddess statues in this playthrough yet. I don't know if I've actually used any. There's a few of them throughout the dungeons, and they'll warp you back to a generally safe area or somewhere close to a safe area. Like this one in Mazurka warps you back to near the town in Bien. There's others throughout the dungeon that will, for example, take you back to the very first town in the game, Maikon, that you may remember from the early episodes of this Let's Play. So we took the elevator up to the 4th floor here, and then we are going to go into this room where Ruth is going to point out a secret area that we previously could not access. So we're going to be prompted to use Mapara, and if we cast it, we are going to enter a new area here with stronger enemies than you normally get in the Sky City BN, curiously enough. So we have definitely stumbled onto something secretive in this second dungeon. That's a lot of experience points, too. Probably is not a bad place in this point in the game to spend a little bit of time grinding. Though you do want to be careful, because a lot of these tiles are trap floor tiles, and they will cause you to fall down into a lower floor, which will require you to work your way all the way back up and cast Mapara again to get back to this secret area on the 4th floor. And a lot of these fights aren't even random encounters. A lot of them are actually, like, specific trap tiles that have specific enemy encounters on them. Though, curiously enough, some of them only trigger if you step on the tile from a certain direction. Now, what I did there, if you look back on all the other maps of the different floors, you are going to notice that there is one specific tile that is just completely walled off from all 4 directions, and that is your hint as to which hole you need to fall down to access the basement floor here, or at least the specific part of the basement floor we need to get into. And if I recall correctly, there are other tiles on this basement floor that will warp you back to other parts of the dungeon, so you need to go through and avoid falling it for those. And then we're going to make our way up to this very super secret staircase. And we're just going to keep going up. And just keep going up. And just keep going up. Until we're all the way back onto this 4th floor. A different part of the 4th floor, keep in mind. And I'm taking a little bit of a breather here to look at the map and make sure I don't fuck this up. Okay, yeah, so, for example here. So I step on that tile, nothing happens. And I'm just fighting the sandworm. I didn't even bother cutting this out because they die so fast at this point. Now, stepping on the same tile but from this direction will trigger a fight with Asura, which is actually a very powerful enemy for this point in the game, so I thought I'd show it off, because it's almost like a miniature boss fight of sorts. It's not that powerful, but I thought it'd be fun to show off. And actually, yeah, I cast a barrier because I'm pretty sure that they have a instant death curse spell that you might want to look out for. Actually can't remember off the top of my head if they actually do have that or if I was just being cautious, but either way, whenever you run up against a powerful enemy in the game, casting Tetraja to just make sure they can't fuck with you is a very good idea. I highly recommend it. Asura is a cool demon. Kind of a little bit of a less impressive role than in SMT1, where it is one of 2 final bosses in that game, but I still always really like the design for Asura, no matter what the game is, just because they tend to look really cool and they have the red color palette going on. Okay, yeah, so we did get hit by a curse there. And yeah, that was not a good time. Fun was not had by anyone. At this point, I just decided that I was going to use that Sacred Bell that I've been holding on to forever now. You know, a lot of people I know are very, you know, very conservative with their revival item usage, but I'm very much a person that's like, yeah, fuck it, smoke them if you got them, with that sort of thing. So I didn't want to fuck with it, and I did not want to game over on this enemy when we came so far into the secret area, so I just went for the revive, and everything turned out okay. Tried to curse us again, but was unsuccessful there, thankfully. And that's that. Once again, got a lot of experience from that encounter. And yeah, we really need to start buffing up Yumiko's vitality. This is getting a little ridiculous. I mean, she's never going to catch up to Nakajima, and I think that's just part of the game. I think Nakajima just gets more from vitality in general. But yeah, doesn't hurt to pump some stats into that. So here we go. Those of you who are familiar with the series may recognize the name Hino Kagetsuchi. It is almost always a very powerful sword available for the main character. And in this game, it is actually the most powerful sword for Nakajima here. So we are going to equip that and never think about equipping any other weapon in this game ever again. Now, those of you who have watched my Shin Megami Tensei 1 Let's Play may remember that this sword is just completely broken in that game. It is nowhere near as powerful in the first Megaton game here. It is still the most powerful melee weapon in the game, but instead of doing up to like 8 hits that are like ridiculously powerful, it does 2 hits that are ridiculously powerful. And it seems to be a little bit less accurate than its SMT1 counterpart as well. So it's not like a completely like broken game changer, but as you can see from that one slash, it still does a shit ton of damage. So yeah, that is also part of the reason why I just recommend by the time you get to the Rotting Sea of Flames, don't bother buying any more weapons for Nakajima, just because you might as well hold off and save your money until you get Ruth and can access the Hino Kagetsuchi. So now that we did that, we can continue on our merry way here through the Rotting Sea of Flames, and we are going to go and kick Set's ass. Funny thing about Set, I actually don't know if I talked about this when we were in the Valhalla corridor and we fought Loki, but this game does have some very loose references to the novel trilogy on which it's based, or at the very least the first 2 digital Devil Story books, because by the time this game had come out for the original Famicom, the 3rd novel was not yet released, so they couldn't work with that, obviously. But yeah, Loki is actually the antagonist of the first digital Devil Story book, and Set, who we're going to come up against here, is actually the antagonist of the 2nd. So there is like you can kind of tell from their dialogue, kind of sort of not really, that both of these demons are familiar with our protagonists, but if you didn't know that going into either of those battles, you probably wouldn't really pick up on it, and it's it's a generic enough dialogue that, like, you just kind of probably wouldn't understand that there is a little bit of history here, technically. But yeah, it's so loose, and, like, I honestly don't really think it's anything to really take too much to heart when talking about this game's story. There's just a few, like, loose connections to those original novels, and I guess technically this is still in continuity with those. Kind of a shame we never got a fan translation for that third novel, though, just because it seems pretty ridiculous. I mean, the first two are already very schlocky and ridiculous on their own, but that third one sounds batshit, so maybe someday some brave soul will take the time and make that happen, but until then, I'm kind of content just having the first two in these games. But yeah, we're gonna continue on our merry way here after that brief detour back to the second area. I really like that a lot, actually, when games in general do that, even more linear ones like this, where they give you an excuse to go back to a previous area and maybe explore a bit. And even especially like how this game does it, where it never prompts you to go back and do that. It just kind of trusts that you maybe remember that there was something weird or fishy going on with an area that was blocked off to you. And it trusts that you remember that, and you go back after you have the resource to go through that obstacle. And go on through and find some cool hidden stuff. That's always really fun, and I especially like it in games that are more linear like this, because it makes them feel almost more secretive in a way than like something like a Metroidvania or like something open world where, you know, you're kind of expected to double back around and revisit places, but in a game like this that's just kind of defined by constant linear progression, you know, just kind of sneaking in some very, very obscure excuses to go back around to a earlier spot, it kind of feels a little bit more impactful, and I think it kind of adds to the, you know, kind of the secretive nature of it, because it's something that the player would otherwise not think to do. And speaking of revisiting areas, oh, it's time to go down this spinny hallway again, Jesus. We are reaching a point here where I am having very conflicted thoughts on the status of my party. As you can see, 3 of them are paralyzed, including our healer, and that's just no fun. So I'm fighting these giants here, and they're starting to deal some damage, and I'm making my way through. As you can see, Hino Kagetsuchi is putting in the work, but I'm starting to think here, do I want to go through with this? Should I maybe consider going back and healing and not fighting a boss with half my party out of commission because of a status effect? And I decided, yeah, that was a pretty damn good idea. So I'm making my way all the way back around. And if you can notice in the upper right, I really should have unsummoned, or, you know, returned, rather, is the word, not unsummoned. I should have returned some of my demons to the stock, because they're really starting to drag on my magnetite. And yeah, again, I'm just looking through all of the possible party members I have to see if there's any party member that's usable that can cure the paralyzed status ailment, and unfortunately, I didn't have any. So, had to go all the way back to the, you know, start of this dungeon where the healer was, and yeah, I made a little transition there. And just make sure that that does not happen again. But yeah, as you can see, we've really lost a lot of magnetite there. And once again, we're finally back to a point in this game where the magnetite mechanic actually matters. Made my way over to the shop again, and, you know, I referenced last time that this area is a little bit more spread out in terms of the shops and healers and stuff. And that ended up mattering, because as soon as I started to run low on magnetite here, just making that trip to the shop was not a fun experience, and it's very clear that I am going to be in a world of trouble as I continue making my way back down to where we left off. As you can see, I'm only at a meager 262 magnetite, so I returned most of my party and I just kept Chimera out. But we were still running at a pretty bad deficit, even with just that one demon out. you know, every random encounter that we successfully kill is a nice little boost, but we're at a point where it's kind of like patching a band-aid on a leaking dam. So yeah, that's one of those things where sometimes those mechanics kind of fall by the wayside as you get really comfortable and complacent almost with the status of your party. But I just spent way too much time rolling with high-level demons for where I'm at in the game, and it just kind of became a thing that snuck up on me, and it kind of created a interesting little bit of tension that added to the drama of this little last bit of dungeon here. So that was fun. Hit that 20 mark with Yumiko's Vitality, so that's good. And yeah, we're just outside the boss room here. Well, this isn't the boss room, but we're about to enter the area where the boss room is. We're closing in on the boss. So I decided to finally summon up the rest of my party and just use the rest of whatever Magnetite and Maka I have to make sure I go into this fight properly prepared. And once again, we're going to be using Ruth to open up the passageway to this boss. You may have remembered last episode I stumbled over my words by saying that Ruth was a optional item to get, but that is actually a lie, because you definitely need Ruth to access this part of the dungeon. And in order to complete it, obviously you need to fight the boss here, so Ruth is not optional. Worth clarifying a second time. And of course, before entering in, let's just top off at least as much as we feel like we need to. And there we go. Set has a very interesting design in this game. And there we go. Time to fight Set, now that we have Persky's Nay and can do so. Maybe strike what I said from the record earlier, though, about Set referencing the previous novels in his dialogue. For whatever reason, I had remembered going into this episode recording, I had thought that Set referenced Nakajima and Yumiko by name. I know Loki does, but I guess Set doesn't really reference the second novel like Loki references the first, huh? Oh well, I mean, Set is still in that second novel, regardless of whether or not his dialogue points to that, so... Huh, yeah, I guess my memory betrayed me on that one. But anyways, enough about story, let's talk about this boss fight. It's the same as all of the others. Well, actually, that is a lie. I believe Set is the first boss fight that we're going to run into that can actually curse you and cause you to die, which he just tried to do there, and it had no effect, thankfully. So, yeah, be on the lookout for that. It's a major pain in the ass if it hits Nakajima or Yumiko. But if you have at least one other party member, if you have two party members with Recarm, honestly, in this game, like, you are set. Especially because reviving a party member basically brings them back all the way up to full HP, full MP. Even though Recarm doesn't always work, it's not a guaranteed full revive, or it's not guaranteed to revive. The fact that it completely restores the party member means that it's very hard for bosses to do lasting damage if you have more than one user of it in your party. Oof. That being said, our party members are getting pretty low on HP here. Gonna keep casting that Meidiyama. And it's especially useful when we have two party members with Meidiyama as well, or three in this case. So, by this point in the game especially, you're gonna run into a realization that Meidiyama is never going to be the full heal back up to full that you want it to be. But what it's really useful for is that it acts as a very nice way to prolong battles of endurance like this, where you don't even necessarily need your party to be completely topped off or doing really great and healthy. You just need to make sure that the enemy runs out of HP before your party members do. So, like, you're going to be constantly losing HP, and, you know, every now and again a demon or two here is going to die. But as long as you keep pumping, you know, your party members with HP, even though that they're slowly running out, you know, as long as you make sure that not too many of them die, you can manage to, like I said, outlast them in a battle of sheer endurance, and make sure that they die before you do. And obviously, if push comes to shove and, you know, your human party members especially are starting to run really low, you can just use your full heal jewels to make sure that, you know, nothing terrible happens and you don't fall into a disaster. But yeah, other than that, same strategy pretty much applies to this boss as the rest of them. Wouldn't be a while for this series to develop bosses with a little bit more personality in terms of gameplay, at least. I guess this boss is a little bit more involved with the instant death spell, so obviously you're going to want demons with Tetraja. And I guess it does. I'd say Set does hit a bit harder than the other bosses in this game, even compared to like where you fight them at. Though I do think that is offset by the fact that Nakajima, if you're playing, you know, optimally rather, does have the Hino Kagetsuchi by this point, so that does make this fight a lot easier than if you went into this boss fight without it. I'm sure it's a lot more difficult. As you can see, we've lost 2 demons, but Set's pretty close to the end of his rope here. And just love those multi-hits, so good. Yeah, he's just about done. Yeah, there you go. So that's Set. Gonna probably level up if I have to guess, yeah. Is it time? Hell yeah, it is. Maximum strength, baby. Fuck yeah. And we also got the best shield in the game, the Lion Shield. So, there you go. Nakajima's getting powerful. We got 1 dungeon left, and I'll see you next time on Let's Play Kyuuyaku Megami Tensei.